Well, usually when they find out I'm a Gold Star mother, they assume it's a son, and I say, no, it's my daughter. And then they say, I'm so sorry, and then they don't know what to say next. And I'm usually at the point where, okay, thank you. But what I wish they would ask is, tell me about your child. Tell me a good memory, because that brings back happy things. And every time you say her name or talk about her, that keeps her memory and honors her.
Everyone has a story to tell.
Stories of hardship, stories of hope,
stories of doubt, stories of faith.
But no matter the story,
these diverse experiences of military life
can all be found at the intersection of faith, family, and profession.
This is OCF Crosspoint.
On the evening of January 23, 2015, Marine Corps Major Elizabeth Betsy Kealey and Captain Adam Satterfield were piloting their helicopter above the high desert landscape of Twentynine Palms, California, when a catastrophic malfunction caused the Huey to plummet to the ground. Both Marines died in the crash. Kealey graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy with honors in 2005, and she received her pilot's wings in September of 2007. She deployed twice with the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit and once in support of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Kealey's mother, Thompson, said Betsy was remembered by many as a woman devoted to her faith, to her family, and to her friends. And she shared a couple of entries from Betsy's journal with me.
This quote is from Betsy's journal when she was on the trek during Rocky Mountain High at Spring Canyon. And she said, I pray that my focus on this trek is hearing from you and loving all of your people. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Another quotation from her journal was how to witness. And this was later that same year, 2005. She was asking questions in her journal. How can I witness? How can I be more than just righteous? I can look for opportunities to talk about the Lord. Faith in the Lord's plan for my life. Let others see me spending time with the Word.
Coming up, Chris is going to share Betsy's story and offer her insights on life as a Gold Star mother. Let's jump into my conversation with Thompson as she shares her story of military life at the intersection of faith, family, and profession.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and then I went to college in another small town in Pennsylvania, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and that's where my first husband, Walt, and I raised our 3 children. I was in a church-going family, went to youth group, rededicated my life when I was a young married. We had a great Bible study, and the lady that led it just was so accepting and so loving. And so I rededicated my life to the Lord, and we knew we were going to bring our children up in the church, and they all loved the church and loved the Lord as much as we did.
Chris, tell me more about Walt.
My husband was type A plus personality. He was an elementary school principal and in the military reserve. So he did a lot for the school. He did a lot in the military, but he always found time for family and made life an adventure. And I have wonderful memories. But unfortunately, he got skin cancer. Not being a sun lover, it was questionable how that happened, but it did. He passed away when he was 56, and it was the year before Betsy's senior year at the Naval Academy. He didn't suffer long, and we had a wonderful family time to say goodbye to him when we knew the end was near, and he lived a wonderful life, and he knew where he was going, so he wasn't afraid of death, and that helped me be stronger too.
And was it through Walt that you guys first heard about OCF? Tell me more about that.
Walt found out about OCF before Betsy went to the academy. And I'm not sure how he found it out, but he took Betsy to the OCF banquet after the Army-Navy game when she was a senior in high school. And he kept in touch with them. And then when we took Betsy to the academy for her induction day, they went and met the people, Tom and Mary Thompson, at the OCF house the day before I-Day. And that was a great connection. She felt loved and accepted and welcomed and knew that she would get through the summer because she could go to OCF meetings every Sunday.
That's great. Well, Chris, let's keep talking about Betsy. And let's start with some basic biographical type of stuff, such as where was she born or where did she grow up? And that's assuming maybe those are two separate places. Maybe they're not. And then move into her childhood and teenage years. I know as a mom, there are probably tons of memories and specific moments that you could recount. But what are some of the more memorable parts or memorable aspects of that time of her life? Things that really started to shape who Betsy would become as a woman.
Betsy was born and grew up in Indiana, Pennsylvania, a small town where everybody knew her because she was our first child, and my first husband was an elementary school principal. And in a small town, he knew most of the kids, and therefore everybody knew our kids. Betsy was an outgoing, friendly, upbeat kid. She always wanted to do her best in school. She just had lots of activities. She played soccer. She never played softball. She ran track, all kinds of different activities. And when she was in between 5th and 6th grade, she went to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, and came home and said, I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to go to the Air Force Academy, graduate, fly, and then I'm going to become an astronaut. Okay. Lots of kids when they're 11 have wild dreams. But when she was 13, she joined Civil Air Patrol because that would be a stepping stone. When she was in 9th grade planning her senior high course study, she went to the guidance counselor and showed him the list. This is what I need to take in 10th grade and 11th grade and 12th grade because I'm going to go to the Air Force Academy and I'm going to be an astronaut. and I asked him because, of course, we knew everybody in the school district, whether, that was a bother to him. He said, I love it when kids have a plan. So Betsy went through high school and went to the Air Force Academy for summer session. Her dad convinced her to go to the Naval Academy for their summer session just to compare. And because we were on the East Coast, he wanted her to go to the Naval Academy. But we let her make the choice. And she did decide that she'd rather go to the Naval Academy than the Air Force Academy, but she was accepted at both. That's the proud mother moment. The reason she didn't, her father was, at the time when she was in high school, the liaison officer for West Point. So that caused a few eyebrows to raise, but her father was okay with her not going to West Point because she wanted to fly fixed wing, and you could only fly helicopters if you went to West Point. Now, the ironic thing is, she went to the Naval Academy, then decided she wanted to fly helicopters. So she could have gone to West Point, but she had a great time at the Naval Academy, and we still have friends from those days.
Let's back up just a second, Chris. When did she know or when did she find out that the military was her calling? And how did wanting to be an astronaut fit into all of that?
Well, a lot of astronauts come out of the military. And because her dad set an excellent example of being in the military and doing service, our family believes strongly in serving others, whether it was through the church or local charities or contributing to missions, World Vision, Compassion, things like that. She wanted to serve, and she wanted to serve her country. So going into the military seemed like the best way for her to serve her country, serve others, and fly.
And she ended up serving in the United States Marine Corps, right?
Yes. And the reason she chose the Marines out of the Naval Academy was because It's harder, Mom. I have to do the hardest thing.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be some Marines out there that really like the sound of that. You want to say that one more time,
Yes.
just for their benefit?
Yes, she said being a Marine pilot is the hardest thing you can do, and that's what I want to do. She gave 110% all the time.
Well, keep talking about her time in the military. Maybe share some stories or memories that really stick out to you even to this day.
Well, she loved flying. She was so excited during training at Pensacola. One time she called me and said, "Guess what I got to do today, Mom?" I don't know. I got to fly low and fast. It was so much fun. I can't believe they pay me to do this. So she really liked flying. She had 3 deployments. 2 were on Muse, which means she was on a ship, and they stopped at all kinds of different ports. And they usually had a day of liberty, and she loved traveling and seeing new places. So she would go off with some of the other females and explore and take tours and just enjoy herself thoroughly. She also had a deployment in Afghanistan on the ground, and I was very nervous, but she said, "Mom, I'm very careful. I know what I'm doing. It's those Russian pilots. They're not as careful. You need to worry and pray for them." But when she came home, she showed me pictures of her helicopter. And I said, "What are these marks?" She says, "Oh, those are bullet holes." And I'm, ugh. She said, "Mom, no big deal. I'm home safe now." You know, she just brushed it off.
Yeah, but as a mom, what are you thinking, even though she's brushing it off like it's no big deal?
Well, the pit in my stomach went away when she came home. But when I saw those, I just, she was home, but you still always worry about your child. Something else we didn't know about until after she had died was she got many accommodations. She had an air medal or 3 air medals and the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal with a gold star. So, when I found out about those, she says, "Oh yeah, no big deal." I mean, that to her, that was part of the job. That wasn't need for parties or celebration. It was just part of her job.
Chris, I want to fast forward just a bit from that point. Tell me about the last conversation that you had with her. How close was that conversation in relation to when the accident occurred with the helicopter?
I need to preface the last conversation with the last time I saw her. Her younger sister worked in retail, and so Christmas get-togethers didn't happen. So we planned a week in California because she said, "I can't take every day off, but I can see you a lot." So the rest of the family flew out to California, had a house for a week, and we hiked and we played board games and we had lots of family time. And before we left, she said, "Now, Mom, I have to go to 29 Palms for 5 weeks. We don't have cell coverage there. I won't be able to call you. Don't freak out." Okay, I won't. So a week later, she calls me, and my first question was, "Why are you calling me?" Now, that shouldn't have been my first question, but I was just, wondering. She told me she had to come home because a helicopter had to get fixed. So she drove her car, and she and another pilot were waiting for it to be fixed, and then they were going to fly it back to 29 Palms. So we just had a normal conversation, chit-chatting, and then before she hung up, she said, "I love you, Mom." I told her I loved her too. And that wasn't uncommon for her to say that. But that was the last word she said to me. And that gives me comfort because we had a great relationship.
Hmm. Chris, take me back to the night of the crash. What happened?
It was a normal day at home. We had some friends visiting, and I got a phone call. And I learned because she always called from weird numbers. So it was a weird number, but I answered it. And it was some official Marine, I can't remember, but they said, "We are calling to tell you that your daughter has been involved in an accident. She has life-threatening injuries, and we are going to arrange transportation for you tomorrow to come out here." And of course, I can't remember what I said. I tried to take some notes because it's all just, awful. And so I went to bed. I couldn't sleep, and I prayed for her because if anybody can survive an accident, she can, because she's so strong and so healthy and she has such great faith. So I prayed the entire time until the very loud, very sudden knock on the door. And I knew what was going to be on the other side of the door. And when I opened the door, he started talking, and I wouldn't let him finish, because if he didn't say it, it wouldn't be true. But eventually he had to get the words out. And I felt so sorry for him, because that's awful news to deliver at 2 a.m. But he was a wonderful Keiko, and our friends were there, and we just hugged and cried, and I don't remember much after that.
Wow. Yeah, Chris, I can't even imagine. Did they share with you any of the details that led up to the crash? Maybe what caused the malfunction in the first place?
It was the perfect storm of things going wrong. She had tested the helicopter that morning, and there's some hydronics display that did just hashtags or, dots, and it was a malfunction. So she told the mechanics about it, and they said, yeah, we'll look into it. So when she took it up again, I guess they checked on it. And then when she started flying to Twentynine Palms, it started doing it. And she just assumed it was just a malfunction with that device. She didn't know that the whole assembly had blown apart and all of her hydronic fluid had gone out the helicopter. And of course, it can't fly when it doesn't have that fluid. And it had been repaired before, so they couldn't totally clean it because something had to have been glued together. And all of these things never happened all together. And she did a Mayday call for avionics support 5 minutes out. And when the the helicopter just stopped, she was a minute from the airfield, and she, it just fell. It just crashed. And I was very worried about, having a minute of terror. And my second husband, Charlie, was a science teacher, and he explained to me, when you fall, she probably only had seconds of knowing that it was, going to happen. I felt very badly because her whole unit heard the Mayday call, and they were out there. They had the fire trucks and all the precautions, but her whole unit saw it happen. And that had to be awful for them too. And I talked to several pilots, and I said, she should have gone back. She should have landed here. She should have. And all the pilots said, we would have done exactly what she did, because we have display malfunctions all the time. The hydraulic fluid does not fall out of a helicopter. Nobody's ever had that assembly explode and lose all the hydraulic fluid. It was just, all these things happened in one given flight. It was, there was, like I said, it was a perfect storm. If 12 things went wrong, if only 11 things would have gone wrong, it probably would have been okay. But all 12, or whatever the number was,
Right.
all these things happened together that made everything she did not matter.
Well, you've already mentioned the blur of emotion that night that you got the knock on your front door. So in the subsequent days or weeks or months after that, during that time period, what was the thing that sustained you, that helped you to just make it through a day?
Well, a lot of prayer, a lot of remembering all the good we had, all the good times we had, all the fun we had, and knowing that she knew the Lord and I knew where she was. That gave me comfort, even though I missed her terribly. I don't recommend it, but it's a good diet. I lost weight because you just can't eat. My husband, Charlie, just was wonderful. He wouldn't let me answer the phone. He took all the phone calls, and then he would say, do you want to talk to this person? And I'd either say yes or no. And but everybody was so kind. Our local paper, one of the reporters that I knew, called Charlie and said, I know it's an awful time, but we want to give her a tribute. So if Chris could talk to me for any bit of time and just give me some highlights. And so I did that. And he had contacted her, some of our neighbors, because I didn't live in the town anymore. He contacted our neighbors. He contacted her high school running coach. He found some of her friends who don't live in the town. I mean, he did a lot of research. And there was a front page article that was tremendous, all about her career, her faith, people saying wonderful things about her. And it gave me comfort because she wasn't going to be forgotten and her service and her life were going to be honored.
So in these past 5 or so years, how have you seen God at work? How has he revealed himself to you?
Well, he supported me. Just like when I lost my husband, he supported me. I felt when and this sounds strange, but I felt God was just holding me up by my butt saying, you can get through every day. And you do. I mean, I cried every day in the car by myself for months because nobody would see me, nobody would hear me. But it was a good relief. And my advice is, if you have to cry, you cry. Don't try to hold it in. It's tears of sadness, but it also means you loved well and you loved a lot and you miss that person. Okay. Well, I'm not one to ask why because I know God has a plan. And one of our Bible studies I've done since Betsy's death was, now I'm going to forget the title. The upper story and the lower story. God's plan is the upper story. Our plan is the lower story. They connect, but while we're on Earth, we sometimes don't know exactly how. And asking why Betsy, there are no good answers, and it would drive me crazy. And I remember sitting at her grave the first time, and it was just going to be, I'm going to sit here as long as I need to. And I clearly heard Betsy saying to me, Mom, come on. I'm gone. I'm in heaven. Be here for a couple minutes, but, go see DC. Go do something else. So I tell God I miss her, and I wish she was here, but he has a plan, and I just have to keep holding on to that. And knowing that I'm going to see her again gives me such comfort.
Hey, let's back up to something you said just a moment ago, and it's about that voice from Betsy telling you to go out and do something fun and to see Washington, D.C. Were you able to do that then? Did you listen to what the voice said, or did that have to come at a later time?
No, I wanted to go there, and I didn't know how it would be, the first time, but I sat there for a couple minutes, looked at her grave. We have a custom of putting stones on her headstone to show that we visited. And now it's sort of, let's pick a pretty stone. Let's pick a stone she would like. I put 5 stones on there for the 5 kids that are in our lives. My second husband had 2 and I had 3. So, and now the grandkids give me stones. So putting those stones on there, letting people know she was visited. And then I had peace of mind. We did go and do some other things in DC, and every time we go to Arlington, we visit her. I sit for a few minutes, and then we explore DC and know that she's watching over us and enjoying our adventures with us.
Well, Chris, let's talk about you being a Gold Star mother. How do people usually act toward you versus how do you wish they would act?
Well, usually when they find out I'm a Gold Star mother, they assume it's a son. And I say, no, it's my daughter. And then they say, I'm so sorry. And then they don't know what to say next. And I'm usually at the point where, okay, thank you. But what I wish they would ask is, tell me about your child. Don't ask me how she died. Don't ask me, those hard questions, but tell me about what was her favorite sport, her favorite color, tell me a good memory, because that brings back happy things. And every time you say her name or talk about her, that keeps her memory and honors her.
Let's keep going with that. What was her favorite sport and what was her favorite color?
Oh my goodness. She loved all kinds of sports. She was a runner. One of her California roommates was trying to get healthy, and Betsy said, and Betsy always wanted to help everyone. In fact, she thought about after the military being a personal trainer. So she told her friend Natita, look, why don't we go for a run? I'll come with you and I'll help you. And Natita said, okay. Natita said after a mile, she was panting. And Betsy was like coming back, running ahead, coming back. Come on, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. And Natita said, I wasn't doing fine. But, Betsy was so encouraging. And then I found out she ran the Boston Marathon. But she was a runner. She surfed. She tried rock climbing. If you wanted to try it or were interested in a sport, she would do it.
And her favorite color?
Oh, that changed. Blue, turquoise. She loved being at the beach.
Well, let's circle back to our conversation about Gold Star mothers. And what would you say to somebody who might be listening right now who is perhaps a recent Gold Star mother?
I hope they have faith because God will get you through this. Even you just take one day at a time, one step. And like I said, it's okay to cry. It's okay to stare into space and not have any coherent thoughts, but also to let people help. I know we want to be strong and independent, but let people help. Let them support you. And if you feel like dancing, dance. If you feel like sitting, sit. It's a new normal, and you just have to let yourself be how you can be. There's also some organizations. One is called TAP, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and their phone number is 202-588-TAPS, which is 8277. You can also reach them at taps.org. But they are willing. They called me like a month after, 3 months after, a year after, and just said, how are you doing today? Can we help you? Do you want to talk? Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than family members, and they've heard it all. So great support system. And I called them the other day, and they're like, how you doing? What do you want to talk about? So there's no time limit. And it even can be for a friend, or it doesn't have to be a relative. They want to help anybody who's going through that grieving process.
Chris, how best can we pray for you and for all Gold Star mothers out there?
Just to have continued strength. There's still hard days, but it helps for when people ask about Betsy, this podcast, different ways to be remembered. But knowing people are praying for me is a wonderful comfort.
So you said that Betsy lived out her faith and that her faith affected other people around her. Tell me more about that.
Well, I found out after she was always very generous with both material possessions and her time for others. I found after she died that she had given a dining room table she had bought to a friend who needed it because she said, I don't really need it. You need it more. Here, take it. Would not take any money for it. She was faithful in her Bible study. She had conversations with people, sometimes uncomfortable conversations, because she would hold them accountable for their behavior and for their relationship with the Lord. One of her friends said, because she was so generous with her time and her concern, that was one of the reasons that people were so heartbroken when she died. And I am so honored. There are 8 babies named after Betsy. They use every part of her name, always as middle names. And people said, I just couldn't use her name as a first name because every time I would say Betsy or Elizabeth, I would be sad. I said, I understand that. But her name, Elizabeth Rose Kealey, is part of 8 little girls' names. And some people I didn't know. They sent me a birth announcement and said, you don't know me, but I met Betsy during flight school, or I met Betsy in the Marines. And we thought so much of her. We named our baby after her. I hope that's okay. Okay, what an honor. It's fabulous. And I am in contact with a lot of those people, and to see those babies grow, and the parents are telling them the oldest one is only 4, but they talk about Betsy and they say, "Oh, Betsy would be proud of you for trying so hard." So knowing that her life meant so much and that her example is going to continue through these girls' lives is simply magnificent.
And speaking of things named after Betsy, there's a room at OCF's Spring Canyon Conference Center that's named in her memory. Take me back to when someone from OCF first contacted you about doing that.
A couple of years ago, I got a call from OCF, and we had made a contribution with some of Betsy's money to OCF because it was such a huge part of her life. She enjoyed the fellowship when she was at the Naval Academy. She joined the Bible study when she was at flight school. She had some connection with it when she was in San Diego, but she was also very active in her church there. So when Chris Blake from OCF called me and said, "People have contacted me and they have money that they want to give in Betsy's honor, and we're wondering how we can do that. There is a room left in Shine Lodge at Spring Canyon that we could name after her. Would you be interested?" Absolutely. And I want to donate money to that cause too. So I made a contribution, and he said he would handle all the letters and the fundraising, and asked me when I would like to have the room dedicated. We chose a time when we were out in Denver, where my son lives, and we had the grandkids with us, Hazel and Finn. And so we had the dedication after we had been there for a few days and enjoyed lots of the amenities at Spring Canyon. And the dedication was lovely. We saw the room. We got to place some pictures and different things about Betsy in the room. And during the dedication, Hazel, who would have been 10 at the time, Hazel remembered Betsy fondly. Hazel was only 6 when she died. But what she said at the dedication was, "I was very sad when Betsy died. I was only 6, but I loved her. But when I have hard times now, I think of Betsy, and I think how she would want me to keep on going. And she continues to inspire me to this day." And I thought those were great words of wisdom from a 10-year-old.
As we start to wrap up our conversation, Chris, is there anything about Betsy's life or anything about Betsys story that you'd like to add?
I think I had 32 wonderful years with Betsy. I mean, I would have taken 82 wonderful years. The other pilot was only 25. And I felt sorry that I had 7 more years than they had with their son. I do have to tell you, I asked a family friend to do the eulogy at Arlington. He knew Betsy. Well, I knew Bob from before we were married. My first husband and I were married. So he knew Betsy from birth on. He was part of our Bible study when we lived in Pennsylvania. And he rewrote and wrote and rewrote and sent me drafts and said, "Whatever you don't like." And I'm like, "Bob, I want it to be your words." But one of the things he said was, Betsy only had 2 flaws. One was she couldn't jump off the diving board at the academy. She eventually did, but we still don't know why. That was just a weird thing. The other one was that she was in charge because she was one of the older kids. Our Bible study met in homes, and all the kids played outside or played downstairs or wherever. And she was in charge of keeping the kids away from the food because we had Bible study. Then we all ate together. And he said, the one time he said, "Betsy, there's brownies on this plate, but don't let any of the kids have the brownies." She said, "I won't." He said, "There were the same number of brownies when we went back, but they were all a little smaller." And I think Betsy sampled them. He said, as a fault, I told her not to have the kids have the brownies, and she didn't. But it was a great, everybody laughed, and he knew we would need a funny moment in the funeral. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like it was a much needed moment of levity. That's a great story, and thank you for sharing that. Hey, so any final thoughts for Gold Star mothers out there who may be listening to your story?
I think if I reach one Gold Star mother, because I didn't have people tell me this, but other people, you do have to get on with your life. I was in a grief support group at our church because a mom lost a son to cancer. And because I had a young, not a young, but a child die, they said, maybe you can connect. And she was still in the I can't do anything stage. And I tried to tell her that, she would go to work and she'd come home and she'd smell his sweatshirt and cry all night. I'm just like, you have to start doing things. And he was, a senior or right out of high school. He wouldn't want you doing this. She was divorced, and it just, she wouldn't accept help or wouldn't. And it's hard to say when you need to get on with your life, but this had been 6 or 8 months, and you just can't keep going there. So I hesitate to say, get on with your life, but there is a point where you have to, you're living and your child would want you to keep on living. And God wants you to keep on living.
A sincere thank you to Chris Thompson, who graciously accepted my request to be on this podcast and to share the heartbreaking yet beautiful story of her daughter Betsy. And from OCF, our prayers and our gratitude to all Gold Star mothers and to the sons and daughters who paid the ultimate price in defense of our nation. OCF Crosspoint is a production of Officers Christian Fellowship. For more information about OCF, check us out online at ocfusa.org or find us on Facebook and Instagram at OCFUSA. This episode was hosted, written, and produced by me, Josh Jackson. Audio cleanup and repair was done by Michael Jerry of Mighty Productions. If you have an idea for a guest, topic, or story that you think should be considered on a future episode, send an email to podcast@ocfusa.org. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us for the next episode of OCF Crosspoint.